Santa Claus, of course, has little to do with Christmas in the first place. Santa's Day has originally always been December 6th, and in a large part of Europe it still is. I'd say that that can be regarded as one of the biggest Santa Claus mistakes. And if I say that something is one of the biggest Santa Claus mistakes, that of course strongly implies that I have made a list of what I regard as the biggest Santa Claus mistakes, which obviously raises the question, what is it that I regard as the biggest Santa Claus mistake? I think, and this is quite controversial, that the biggest Santa Claus mistake is having your kids actually believe in it. In fact, I'm willing to use strong language to express how stupid I find it. For it is an ass-backwards, retarded idea, and I will explain why. Firstly, the idea that kids will enjoy the holidays more if they believe in Santa Claus is completely unfounded. That's just not how kids work. Kids can be extremely invested in playing pretend, and they ardently do that all the fucking time, because it is what kids do. Unless you have very bad memory, or if you had a very traumatic experience in childhood, you certainly must remember how easy it was for your primary school teacher to get a class on board with all kinds of theatrics. They could, for example, randomly put on a silly hat and do a silly voice, and suddenly the class knows that it is time to play pretend. The teacher is no more, and they are now whatever character they claim to be. Right? And it is literally the same for Santa Claus. I, for one, was not raised believing in Santa Claus, and that is true for a lot of kids. Not every parent chooses to let their kids believe in Santa Claus. In some circles, it is really quite rare. One time, when Santa was visiting our school, when I was a kid, we all collectively witnessed Santa Claus taking off his beard. The situation was that Santa was in the teacher's break room, which was located in such a way that it protruded into the schoolyard, so that the teachers would have a good view of the schoolyard while they were on break. But that obviously also meant that the kids could also see into the break room as well. And Santa Claus comes to have his break there, and obviously he takes off his mitre, his wig and his beard. And that was out in the open, basically for all kids to see. And we did. We all saw. And I don't know, as I can't remember, I don't know if there were any kids who learned that day that Santa wasn't real. But I do know for a fact that it was not a hindrance at all. And that in the very least the majority of us had already been aware that Santa Claus is not real. And yet, we kids were very invested in it. As you are in Santa Claus when you are a kid. There was absolutely no need for us to believe that any of it was real. Kids are generally just very good at taking fiction seriously. If you think that if you think that children lose interest in Santa Claus if they know that it isn't real, you know nothing about children. Obviously, the American Santa Claus is radically inferior to the various European versions of Santa Claus. Like, he doesn't even have a staff, right? And he does that rather undignified laugh of his, ho ho ho. American Santa simply does not have the swag, and is generally harder to take seriously, especially when he randomly invades Christmas, as though Christmas isn't about something else. The real war on Christmas is actually Santa Claus. Obviously, Santa Claus can never be as popular in America as he is in the Netherlands, as it is the case that in the US he is simply a lesser version of himself. But still, the core of the character that is so universally beloved is definitely there, even in America. And I am convinced that he does not need these dumb lies to ensure his popularity. Though there's one thing that I do tend to like about the American Santa Claus, and that is that he lives on the North Pole. I think that that is marginally better than what we have. I'm actually too ashamed to even mention where Santa Claus is supposedly from in the Netherlands. So if you do not know, that is going to be between you and Google.